Family loyalty is a myth peddled by people who have never been disowned on Christmas Eve. 3 years ago, my parents threw me out into the freezing snow, calling my ambitions a joke. Yesterday, they sat weeping in my corporate boardroom, begging me to hire the disgraced golden boy brother who bankrupted them. If you grew up in a household where love was conditional, you know exactly how it feels to breathe the thin, suffocating air of never being enough. My name is Chloe. For the first 24 years of my life, my official title wasn't daughter, sister, or friend. It was Liam's little sister, accompanied by a heavy, disappointed sigh. We grew up in Westport, Connecticut, a picturesque town where perfectly manicured lawns hid incredibly messy secrets. My father, Peyton Hastings, was a senior partner at a corporate law firm in Manhattan. My mother, Beverly, was a high-end real estate agent who treated every social interaction like an open house, fake smiles, strategic compliments, and a desperate need to close a deal. In their world, image wasn't just everything, it was the only thing. And then there was Liam. Liam was 3 years older than me, and from the moment he could walk, he was the undisputed king of the Hastings household. He was the classic golden boy, tall, charismatic, captain of the lacrosse team, and blessed with the kind of effortless, arrogant charm that blinded people to his actual character. My parents worshipped the ground he walked on. When Liam got a B on a test, the school curriculum was flawed. When Liam crashed my father's BMW at 17 because he was driving recklessly, my parents blamed the icy road conditions, even though it was a clear night in late April. I, on the other hand, was the family's resident black sheep. I wasn't interested in Ivy League prestige or corporate ladders. I was an artist. I loved digital design, coding, and building things from scratch. While Liam was out partying on our parents' dime, I was in my bedroom teaching myself Adobe Illustrator and web development, taking on cheap freelance gigs for local businesses just to buy my own drawing tablets. The favoritism wasn't even subtle. It was a daily, grinding reality. I remember my high school graduation. I had managed to scrape together enough freelance money to pay for a portion of my tuition at a state university, knowing my parents wouldn't fund an art degree. At my graduation dinner, instead of celebrating my milestone, my father spent 45 minutes bragging to our extended family about Liam's upcoming internship at Benson & Cole, a prestigious wealth management firm in Boston. Liam is on the partner track before he's even graduated. My father beamed, clinking his crystal wine glass. He's got the Hastings ambition. He's going to be running his own firm by 30. My aunt politely turned to me and asked, "And what about you, Chloe? Are you excited for college?" Before I could answer, my mother laughed a high, brittle sound. "Oh, Chloe is going to a state school to study. What is it, sweetheart? Computer drawing? We're just hoping she finds a sensible husband who can support her little hobbies. The arts are so unstable." I sat there, staring at my plate, swallowing the lump in my throat. Liam sat across from me, smirking, a piece of perfectly cooked steak on his fork. "Hey, don't knock it, Mom," Liam sneered. "Someone has to design the menus for the restaurants I'll be eating at." That was the dynamic. Liam was the sun, my parents were the planets orbiting him, and I was Pluto, cold, distant, and barely considered part of the system. But what my parents refused to see was that Liam's success was a carefully constructed house of cards. He was incredibly lazy. He plagiarized papers in college, relying on his fraternity brothers to bail him out. He blew through his allowance and constantly borrowed money from my parents, framing it as investments in his networking. I saw the real Liam. I saw the entitlement, the cruelty, and the hollow core beneath the designer suits. But whenever I tried to warn my parents, I was accused of being jealous. "You're just bitter, Chloe," my father told me once when I pointed out Liam had stolen $500 from my emergency savings jar. "Liam is under a lot of pressure. He has a future to think about. You shouldn't leave cash lying around anyway. Consider it a lesson in responsibility." I learned a lesson that day, all right. I learned that in the Hastings family, I was entirely on my own. I moved out the day after I turned 18, took out student loans, worked nights as a bartender, and poured every waking second into my craft. I was going to build my own empire, brick by exhausting brick, even if it killed me. But the final severing of my family ties the moment the bridge didn't just burn, but exploded didn't happen until the infamous Christmas of 2019. By December 2019, I was 24 and running on fumes. I had officially launched my own digital marketing and design agency, Lumina Creative. Calling it an agency was generous. It was just me, a refurbished MacBook, and a tiny, drafty apartment in Brooklyn where the radiator hissed but never actually produced heat. I was working 100-hour weeks, eating 99-cent ramen noodles, and pouring every penny of profit back into software licenses and server hosting. I was exhausted, stressed, and financially terrified, but I was proud. I had 3 steady, paying clients. I was surviving. Liam, meanwhile, was 27 and supposedly conquering the financial world. He was a junior portfolio manager at Benson & Cole, driving a leased Porsche and wearing watches that cost more than my annual rent. I had debated not going home for Christmas that year. My bank account was overdrawn by $12, and I couldn't afford a train ticket, let alone the extravagant gifts my family expected. But my friend Jessica, who knew my family situation, begged me not to isolate myself. Just go, Chloe. Show your face, eat some free turkey, and leave. It's family. You only get one. So, I borrowed $50 from Jessica for the train, packed my modest gifts, and headed to Connecticut. The moment I walked through the door of my parents' sprawling colonial home, I felt the familiar weight of inadequacy crush my chest. The house smelled of expensive pine and roasted duck. Classical music played softly in the background. Sitting on the velvet sofa, looking like they had just stepped out of a catalog, were Liam and his new fiancée, Sarah Kensington. Sarah came from old money, the kind of family that had buildings named after them. She looked at me the way you look at a stray dog that has wandered into a Michelin star restaurant. Chloe. My mother greeted me, offering a stiff air kiss near my cheek. You look tired. Are you eating? You're wearing that same sweater you wore at Thanksgiving. I'm fine, Mom. Just working hard on my business, I said, trying to force a smile. Right. The little freelance thing, my father chimed in from the bar, pouring himself a scotch. Glad you could take time away from the internet to join us. Dinner was an exercise in psychological endurance. Liam held court, regaling my parents and Sarah with stories of his massive trades, his golf games with wealthy clients, and his brilliant future. My parents hung on his every word. Sarah just smiled, her massive diamond engagement ring catching the chandelier light every time she reached for her wine glass. When it came time for the gift exchange, my anxiety skyrocketed. Liam went first. He handed my parents a sleek silver envelope. My mother opened it and gasped. Liam! Oh my God! Peyton, look! It was an all-expenses-paid first-class trip to a luxury resort in Cabo San Lucas for 2 weeks. I would find out years later that he had maxed out 3 different high-interest credit cards to pay for it, but at the moment it looked like the ultimate display of wealth. My father wiped a tear from his eye, clapping Liam on the shoulder. Son, this is incredible. You shouldn't have. But this is what success looks like. Being able to take care of your family. Then all eyes turned to me. I swallowed hard. I handed my parents my gifts. For months, I had been secretly collecting old, damaged, faded photographs of my parents' late parents, my grandparents. I had spent countless late-night hours meticulously scanning, digitally restoring, color-correcting, and enhancing the photos. I then had them printed on high-quality archival paper and placed in beautiful, modest wooden frames. Alongside the photos, I included a $50 gift card to the local bakery my mom loved. It was thoughtful. It took dozens of hours of my specialized labor. It was all I had. My mother tore the wrapping paper. She looked at the framed photos. A heavy, uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Oh, she said, her voice dropping an octave. It's pictures of my mother. I restored them, I explained quickly, my face burning. You see the tear that used to be across Grandma's face? I painted it out digitally, and I colorized the one of Grandpa in his uniform. Sarah let out a short, breathy laugh. Wow, arts and crafts time. Liam smirked, leaning back on the sofa. Geez, Chloe. A gift card to a bakery and some printed photos? Things must be really tight in the business if you're resorting to DIY projects for Christmas. I thought you said you had clients? It took me 60 hours to restore those, I said, my voice trembling. It's a piece of our family history. My father set his scotch glass down heavily on the coffee table. Chloe, please, let's not make excuses. It's the thought that counts. But frankly, this is exactly what we've been warning you about. You are 24 years old. You are playing on your computer while your brother is out here in the real world, securing his future, securing our future. I am building a company, Dad. I finally raised my voice, the years of suppression snapping. I work 100 hours a week. Just because I'm not pushing papers for rich people like Liam doesn't mean I'm a failure. Don't you dare raise your voice to your father in this house, my mother shrieked. Liam bought us a trip to Mexico. You bought us a $50 gift card and pictures we already own. It is embarrassing, Chloe. It's an embarrassment to this family. I stood up, my fists clenched. Liam bought that trip to show off for his snobby fiancé. I yelled, pointing at Sarah, who gasped in performative horror. Liam doesn't care about you. He uses you. Do you know how many times he called me in college begging me to do his finance homework because he was too hungover? The golden boy is a fraud. The room went dead silent. Liam stood up, towering unjawned of me, his face red with fury. You shut your mouth, you jealous little bitch. You're just pissed because you're a broke loser, and everyone in this room knows it. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to intervene, waiting for them to tell Liam not to speak to me that way, waiting for just 1 ounce of parental defense. Instead, my father pointed a shaking finger at the front door. Get out, he said, his voice cold and terrifyingly calm. Dad. I said, get out, my father repeated. If you are going to sit at my table, drink my wine, and attack your brother out of pure, bitter jealousy because you refuse to get a real job, then you do not belong in this house. Tears streamed down my face. I looked at my mother. She turned her head away, refusing to make eye contact. Don't bother coming back, my father added, twisting the knife. Not for Thanksgiving, not for next Christmas. Don't come back until you've grown up, dropped this childish fantasy, and actually made something of yourself. We are done funding and enabling your failures. I didn't say another word. I grabbed my cheap coat, leaving the restored photograph sitting on the coffee table next to Liam's silver envelope. I walked out into the freezing Connecticut night. The snow was falling heavily, coating the driveway in a thick sheet of white. I walked 2 miles to the train station in the snow, shivering, crying so hard I couldn't see straight. But as I sat on the empty, brightly lit commuter train back to New York City at midnight on Christmas Eve, the tears stopped. A profound, icy clarity washed over me. They wanted me to make something of myself? They wanted me to be a success? Fine. I pulled out my battered notebook and a pen. I didn't celebrate Christmas the next day. I worked. I vowed to the universe and to myself that the next time the Hastings family heard the name Chloe, it wouldn't be as a punchline. It would be as a threat. I was going to build an empire that would cast a shadow so large, Liam's little financial career would be swallowed whole by it. I just didn't know how quickly, or how brutally, karma was going to handle the rest. The anger I carried back with me on that freezing train wasn't the hot, explosive kind that burns out quickly. It was cold. It was absolute. It became the bedrock of everything I built over the next 3 years. When January 2020 rolled around, I stopped mourning the family I never really had and started treating my life like a military campaign. I canceled my Netflix subscription, stopped going out for cheap drinks with Jessica, and slept a maximum of 5 hours a night. I took the pain of my father's dismissal, don't come back until you've actually made something of yourself, and weaponized it. Then, the world turned upside down. When the global lockdowns hit in the spring of 2020, traditional businesses panicked. Companies that had relied entirely on brick-and-mortar storefronts, handshakes, and paper ledgers were suddenly staring at total bankruptcy. They needed to digitize, and they needed to do it yesterday. That's where Lumina Creative stepped in. While massive, bloated tech agencies took weeks to return emails and quoted outrageous 6-figure sums just for basic consulting, I was agile, hungry, and working out of my living room. My big break came through a desperate LinkedIn message from a man named Jonathan Reed. He was the CEO of Vanguard Logistics, a mid-sized regional supply chain company based in New Jersey. His company was hemorrhaging money because their antiquated dispatch and inventory systems couldn't handle the sudden, massive pivot to e-commerce fulfillment. Jonathan offered me a modest retainer, $10,000, to patch up their website. Instead of just patching it, I stayed awake for 4 days straight, hopped up on Adderall and black coffee, and rebuilt their entire customer-facing portal. I integrated a cloud-based tracking system, automated their client onboarding, and optimized their digital footprint so thoroughly that their operational bottleneck cleared in less than a week. Jonathan didn't just pay my invoice, he doubled it. More importantly, he introduced me to his network. "You don't just design things, Chloe," Jonathan told me over a Zoom call that May. "You build digital infrastructure. Stop charging like a freelancer and start billing like an enterprise firm." I took his advice. I rebranded Lumina Creative to simply Lumina Tech Partners. I hired 2 brilliant remote back-end developers from Eastern Europe and a sharp project manager named David who used to work at IBM. We stopped pitching mom-and-pop shops and started targeting mid-market financial and logistics firms. By the end of 2020, Lumina had crossed $1 million in gross revenue. By the end of 2021, we hit $8 million. My life transformed with dizzying speed. I moved out of my drafty Brooklyn apartment and signed a lease on a massive, light-filled loft in Tribeca. I bought my first tailored suit. I hired a wealth manager, ironically, a brilliant woman at a boutique firm, not some frat boy at a legacy institution. But I kept my head down. I never posted on social media. I didn't want my parents to know I was succeeding. I wanted to build an impenetrable fortress before they ever realized I had laid the first brick. In late 2022, my firm caught the attention of Oakbridge Capital, a Tier 1 venture capital firm. They saw the proprietary data integration software my team had developed for financial institutions and wanted in. They led a Series A funding round that injected $25 million into Lumina. I retained majority ownership, became the CEO of a 70-person company, and officially moved into a sprawling glass and steel corner office in Midtown Manhattan. I was 27 years old. I had finally made something of myself. And right as I was reaching the summit, I got a text from Jessica, who still lived in Westport and loved town gossip more than oxygen. "You are not going to believe what is happening at the Hastings house," she wrote. "Call me right now." Karma is rarely swift. Usually it takes its time, gathering momentum, waiting for the perfect moment to execute a flawless, devastating strike. While I had spent the last 3 years building a legitimate business, Liam had spent it playing an increasingly dangerous game of pretend. The details poured out of Jessica over a 2-hour phone call, corroborated later by quiet whispers in the Manhattan financial circles I now ran in. It turned out Liam's brilliant career as a portfolio manager at Benson & Cole was a complete mirage. He wasn't making brilliant trades. He was riding a bull market while simultaneously siphoning client funds to cover his own catastrophic personal debts. He and his fiancée, Sarah Kensington, had been living a lifestyle suited for a billionaire, not a junior manager. The luxury apartment in Soho, the bespoke suits, the VIP tables at exclusive clubs, the lavish trips, it was all financed by a toxic cocktail of high-interest margin loans and, eventually, quiet, illegal borrowing from accounts he managed. Liam thought he was smart enough to put the money back before anyone noticed. He thought he was untouchable. He had the Hastings charm after all. But when the market experienced a sharp correction in late 2022, his over-leveraged tech portfolios tanked. The margin calls came in. The money he had stolen couldn't be replaced. Benson & Cole's internal auditors caught the discrepancies on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, Liam was escorted out of the building by corporate security, his access badges revoked, his career instantly vaporized. The fallout was catastrophic. To avoid a federal indictment for wire fraud and embezzlement, Liam had to sign a devastating settlement agreement. Benson & Cole agreed to keep it quiet and not press criminal charges, but only if the stolen funds amounting to nearly $1.4 million were repaid within 60 days. Furthermore, Liam was permanently blacklisted from the financial industry. FINRA barred him for life. When Sarah found out Liam was broke, disgraced, and facing potential prison time, she didn't stand by her man. She packed her designer bags, left the engagement ring, which Liam still owed $80,000 on the kitchen counter, and moved back to her family's estate in the Hamptons. With nowhere else to go, a 29-year-old disgraced, bankrupt Liam moved back into his childhood bedroom in Westport, but the tragedy didn't stop with him. It infected my parents like a virus. My father, Peyton, had built his entire identity around being a titan of corporate law and the patriarch of a successful legacy. To save his golden boy from federal prison, Peyton liquidated his retirement accounts, sold his stock portfolios, and cashed in every favor he had. It wasn't enough. My parents were forced to quietly remortgage their pristine Westport Colonial at an abysmal interest rate just to cover the final balance of Liam's restitution. The stress of the scandal leaked into my father's professional life. While Benson and Cole didn't press charges, the financial world is a small town. Rumors swirled. Clients at Peyton's law firm began asking questions about his judgment. A senior partner whose son is an embezzler is a liability. By early 2023, Peyton was quietly asked to step down from the partnership board and take an early, scaled-back retirement. My mother, Beverly, fared no better. Real estate is a game of optics and social standing. Once word got around the country club that the Hastings were financially drowning and their son was a fraud, the cold shoulders began. Her wealthy clients stopped giving her their listings. The country club quietly informed them that their dues were in arrears. In the span of a few months, the Hastings family went from Westport royalty to pariahs living month to month, drowning in debt, trapped in a house they could no longer afford, with a son who slept until noon and played video games to avoid reality. I watched it all happen from a distance, feeling a strange mix of profound vindication and hollow sadness. I never reached out. They had told me not to come back, and I had honored their request. I assumed that was the end of our story. We would simply exist on parallel tracks, never intersecting again. I was wrong. In late 2023, my company, Lumina, acquired a smaller boutique financial consulting firm to expand our fintech capabilities. As part of the acquisition, we took over a massive, lucrative contract advising none other than Benson and Cole on their internal security protocols, the very protocols they were upgrading because of Liam's theft. Through that acquisition, my name finally hit the industry press. The Wall Street Journal did a full-page feature on me, Chloe Hastings, the 28-year-old outsider revolutionizing fintech. The article mentioned my upbringing in Westport. It mentioned my age. It featured a high-resolution, professional photo of me sitting in my boardroom, looking directly into the camera. The day the article was published, my executive assistant, Maria, knocked gently on my office door. "Chloe?" she said, looking slightly confused. "I'm sorry to interrupt. There are two people at the reception desk. An older couple. They don't have an appointment, and building security usually doesn't let walk-ins up, but they claimed it was a family emergency." My stomach dropped. The coldness that had protected me for years suddenly cracked, replaced by a spike of adrenaline. "Did they give names?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly steady. "Peyton and Beverly Hastings," Maria said, looking down at her tablet. "They say they're your parents." I looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office, watching the yellow cabs crawl like ants 50 stories below. 3 years. 3 years of silence, of struggle, of building an empire from the ashes of my own family's rejection. And now, armed with a Wall Street Journal feature and desperate empty pockets, they had found me. "Put them in boardroom B," I told Maria, turning back to my desk to straighten my jacket. "Offer them sparkling water. Don't give them coffee." "And Maria?" "Yes, Miss Hastings?" "Make sure Liam isn't waiting in the lobby. If he is, have security escort him to the sidewalk." I took a deep breath, grabbed my tablet, and walked down the glass-walled corridor toward the boardroom, ready to face the ghosts of Christmas past. Boardroom B at Lumina Tech Partners was designed to intimidate. It featured a 20-foot table carved from a single slab of reclaimed black walnut, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a dizzying, unobstructed view of the Manhattan skyline. It was a room where multi-million-dollar acquisitions were finalized and where fragile egos went to die. When I pushed open the heavy glass door, the silence in the room was absolute. Sitting near the far end, looking completely swallowed by the sheer scale of the space, were Peyton and Beverly Hastings. The last time I had seen them, they were practically glowing with upper-class arrogance, sipping scotch and dismissing my existence. Now, 3 years later, The transformation was jarring. My father had aged a decade. The custom-tailored suits were gone, replaced by an off-the-rack gray blazer that hung loosely on his frame. His hair had thinned and gone completely white. My mother, who used to spend thousands on Botox and fillers, looked hollowed out. Her designer handbag, likely a relic from her past life, was clutched tightly in her lap like a life preserver. They stood up nervously as I walked in. I didn't offer a hand to shake. I didn't smile. I walked to the head of the table, placed my tablet down, and looked at them. "Hello, Peyton. Beverly," I said, my voice perfectly level. My mother flinched at the use of her first name. "Chloe? Sweetheart, you look... My God, you look incredible." Her eyes darted around the opulent boardroom. This is all yours?" "I have 10 minutes before my next executive briefing," I replied, ignoring her question. "Maria said there was a family emergency. Who died?" My father cleared his throat, trying to summon the booming, authoritative voice that used to make me shrink. It came out as a raspy croak. "No one died, Chloe. Please, sit down. We need to talk to you. As a family." "We aren't a family," I stated simply, remaining standing. "We ceased being a family on Christmas Eve of 2019 when you kicked me out into a blizzard and told me never to return. So, whatever this is, treat it as a business meeting. You have 9 minutes." Tears immediately welled up in my mother's eyes. Real ones this time. "Chloe, please, don't be like this. We made a mistake. We were so blinded by expectations. We've lost everything. The house on Post Road is in foreclosure. Your father was forced out of his firm. We're living in a rented condo in Norwalk." "I read the industry chatter," I said, my expression unchanged. "I know about Liam's embezzlement at Benson and Cole. I know he nearly went to federal prison. I know you bankrupted yourselves to pay his restitution. I'm sorry you made terrible financial decisions, but I fail to see how this involves Lumina or me." My father stepped forward, his knuckles white as he gripped the back of a leather chair. "It involves you because you are in a position to fix this. We read the Wall Street Journal piece. We know your company just acquired the consulting firm that is restructuring Benson and Cole's cybersecurity and compliance divisions." I raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "Liam is unhireable," my father said, his voice cracking with desperation. "FINRA banned him. No legitimate firm will touch him. He's deeply depressed, Chloe. He doesn't leave his room. He has no income, and we have no money left to support him. But your company, you operate in tech, not just finance. You could hire him?" I stared at him, genuinely stunned by the audacity. "You came here, to my company, to ask me to hire the golden boy who called me a broke loser? He can be a consultant," my mother pleaded, stepping forward. "He knows the financial markets. He just made a mistake, Chloe. A stupid, youthful mistake under immense pressure. If you gave him a title here, a salary, it would save him. It would save us. We could finally rebuild. And there's something else," my father added, leaning in, his eyes wide with a manic kind of hope. "You have leverage over Benson and Cole now. You are their primary security vendor. You could talk to their board. You could ask them to forgive the remaining $400,000 of Liam's restitution debt. They would listen to you. You're a CEO. You're one of them now." A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the room. I looked at the two people who had created me, who had systematically broken me down for 2 decades, and who had discarded me like trash when I didn't fit their aesthetic. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt profound, chilling pity. I picked up my tablet, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it around to face them. On the screen was a highly classified internal forensic audit report. "Let me tell you a little story about my company," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "When Lumina took over the Benson and Cole contract, my first directive was to deploy our proprietary AI algorithms to retroactively scan their entire ledger for the past 5 years. We needed to see exactly how their internal firewalls were breached so we could patch them." My father's face went pale. He knew enough about corporate law to know where this was going. "Do you know what my software found, Peyton?" I asked, looking him dead in the eye. "It found that Liam's youthful mistake wasn't just a margin call gone wrong. My team uncovered a secondary, deeply encrypted offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Liam wasn't just covering bad trades. He was actively siphoning an additional $400,000 that Benson and Cole's internal human auditors completely missed. My mother gasped, clapping a hand over her mouth. No, that's a lie. He promised us. He lied to you, Beverly. He lied to everyone, I said coldly. And because Lumina Tech Partners is a fully compliant, SECant-regulated entity, when my forensic accountants uncovered this new hidden theft, we were legally obligated to report it. We handed the complete digital footprint over to the Securities and Exchange Commission and the FBI 3 days ago. My father physically stumbled back, his legs hitting the edge of a chair. You turned your own brother into the feds? I didn't turn my brother in. I corrected him fiercely. I submitted a mandatory compliance report regarding a known cyber criminal who defrauded my client. I did my job, the job you told me to go get. They'll arrest him, my father whispered, the reality crashing down on him, crushing the last of his pride into dust. The non-prosecution agreement he signed with Benson and Cole was contingent on full disclosure. If he hid money, it voids the agreement. He'll go to federal prison. Yes, I said. He probably will. And considering he used your home network in Westport to access some of those offshore accounts, I strongly suggest you find a very good, very cheap criminal defense attorney for yourselves, just in case they decide to audit your knowledge of his assets. My mother broke down. She collapsed into one of the expensive leather chairs, sobbing hysterically, her carefully maintained facade completely shattered. "You're a monster," she wailed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "How could you do this to your own blood? You planned this. You wanted to destroy us out of spite." "I didn't plan anything," I replied, feeling a profound sense of closure wash over me. Karma did the heavy lifting. I just built the net that caught him. I walked over to the glass door and pulled it open. Maria was standing in the hallway, looking concerned. 2 large men in dark suits from building security were standing right behind her. "I remember exactly what you said to me on Christmas Eve, Peyton," I said, my voice echoing in the quiet room. "You told me not to come back until I had made something of myself." "Well, I did. I made an empire. And there is no room in it for you." I looked at the security guards. "Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Hastings to the lobby. Their business here is permanently concluded." "Chloe, please," my father begged, reaching a hand out as the guard stepped into the room. "You can't just leave us like this. We're your parents." "Goodbye, Peyton," I said. I turned my back on them and walked down the long, sunlit corridor toward my office. I could hear my mother's sobs echoing down the hall, but I didn't look back. I didn't hesitate. I walked into my corner office, closed the heavy oak door, and sat down at my desk. The city hummed below me, vast, alive, and completely indifferent to the drama of one shattered family. I opened my laptop, pulled up the codebase for our next big software launch, and went back to work. It has been over a year since that meeting in the boardroom. The dominoes fell exactly as my legal team predicted. 2 weeks after our SEC filing, Liam was indicted by a federal grand jury on multiple counts of wire fraud, embezzlement, and violating the terms of his previous settlement. Because of the sheer amount of undeniable digital evidence my company provided, his public defender advised him to plead guilty. He is currently serving a 5-year sentence at a minimum security federal correctional institution in Pennsylvania. Peyton and Beverly were investigated but ultimately cleared of any criminal wrongdoing, though the legal fees completely bankrupted them. The Westport house was seized by the bank. Last I heard from Jessica, my parents are living in a tiny, 1-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. Peyton works as a paralegal for a small strip mall law firm, taking orders from men half his age. Beverly works the reception desk at a local dentist's office. They are finally living the real-world life they used to mock me for enduring. As for me, I just celebrated my 30th birthday. Lumina Tech Partners recently went public, making me one of the youngest female billionaires in the tech sector. I don't celebrate Christmas with a tree or a turkey anymore. Instead, every December 24th, I take my closest friends and my core team out for a massive, wildly expensive dinner at the best restaurant in Manhattan. We drink vintage champagne, we laugh, and we celebrate the families we choose, rather than the ones we are born into. I kept the restored photographs of my grandparents. They sit on a shelf in my penthouse, a quiet reminder of where I came from, and a testament to the fact that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk out the door and never, ever look back. Blood might be thicker than water, but loyalty is built on respect, not genetics. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to walk away from toxic family members to protect your own peace and build your own empire, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories. Stay strong and keep building.